Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Steve Gregorian, President and CEO of the Detroit Economic Club. Welcome to today's meeting, and I especially want to welcome our DEC members. If you're not a DEC member yet, however, please allow me 5 seconds to myth bust. There's no nomination or application process. There's no salary or job level requirement. We're simply looking for people that would like to build their networks and hear from thought leaders like the one you'll see on stage today. You can sign up to become a member at econclub.org. As we get started, I would ask you just to kindly silence your cell phone so we do not disturb today's program. And if you've been with us before, you know we always begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. So I would ask you to stand and join me as we honor our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please be seated. A special thank you today. I want to shout out Detroit Public TV for our partnership in a brand new series we're introducing today focused on the future of work. I don't have to tell you, today's workforce and workplace has undergone massive upheaval. So with this series over the next 12 months, we'll examine the multifaceted trends and issues that every company faces. So thank you to Detroit Public TV and to Lawrence Technological University for their live stream of today's meeting. And if you've been with us before, we love having high school and college students with us at each meeting. Today is no exception. They are here courtesy of our generous corporate sponsors. They also had the opportunity to spend some time with our guest speakers today, and I want to tell you who's with us. We've got two groups from Melvindale High School, one sponsored by Patrick Colleen and Baker Tilly, another by Susan Gibson and Raymond. We've got Schoolcraft College, thanks to John Lehman from Bank of Ann Arbor, and of course, they're all great-looking students, but the very best of them are from AGBU Manoogian School, and they are sponsored by Kelly Services, thank you, Peter, and Mark Mendola, PwC. So please join me in a round of applause to welcome the students, thank the sponsors. Couple things on your table. One, the season lineup. After today, we've got a couple of events I want you to know about. November 30th, after Thanksgiving, we've got the pleasure to host Dr. Lisa Cook. She is one of the governors of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. She's also a Michigan State University economics professor. And then on December 7th, the next meeting in this Future of Work series will host Johnny Taylor, who's the CEO of the Society of Human Resources. So we look forward to seeing you at both of those. More to come. Check out our schedule and watch your email for additional announcements. Also on your table is our lovely sponsors and partners. Please take a minute, check it out. We would not be here today if it wasn't for their generosity, and we continue to thank them because they are the reason we can bring you terrific programs. And of course, the DEC has an incredible history of speakers that tell the history of this great country. Mark and Mark, November 17th is a very popular date in our 88-year history, and you guys now join a distinguished list of 13 others who graced our stage on this day. And a few highlights, I think you'll recognize these names. Way back in 1941, remember the year, 1941, Nelson Rockefeller addressed the DEC. He delivered a speech titled Hemisphere Defense. 1941. 1969, then Congressman Gerald Ford. 2011, GM CEO Dan Akerson, and 2015, Michael Dell from Dell Computers, of course. So today we're pleased to add you both, Mark and Mark, as our 14th and 15th speakers on this day in DEC history. So congratulations and thanks for being with us. Really quickly, 2 ways for you to be involved in today's program. We'd love for you to take a photo, share with your social media networks, and you can do that using hashtag EconClub. And you can also submit a question if you've got a question about the future of work because we're all dying to figure this out, right? But if you've got a question, there's instructions on your table. You can use your smartphone, and those questions will make their way to our presiding officer who's about to go to work. Peter Quigley is the president and CEO of Kelly. He's a DEC board member, a great friend to the DEC, and a solid supporter of many things in our community. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Peter Quigley. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, everyone, members and guests. At Kelly, we are a workforce and talent company. We place 350,000 individuals on assignment every year. We also help more than 50,000 individuals find permanent work every year. So whenever there's an opportunity to participate in a conversation about talent, count me in, especially one that includes our distinguished guests, Mark and Mark. Our first Mark Hoplamazian, is President and CEO of Hyatt Hotels Corporation, a position he has held since 2006. Hyatt's portfolio includes more than 1,150 hotels and all-inclusive properties in 72 countries around the world, 6 continents. Prior to his current position, Mark served as president of the Pritzker Organization, the principal financial and investment advisor for Pritzker Family Business Interests. Mark previously worked in international mergers and acquisitions at the First Boston Corporation in New York. Our second Mark Mendola, is vice chair and U.S. managing partner at PwC. Mark leads PwC's business and go-to-market efforts with a focus on delivering value and quality to PwC clients. Mark leads PwC's efforts to change business models and service offerings through technology and has overall responsibility for the firm's people and digital transformation strategies. PwC is Kelly's independent financial auditor, and I know the digital transformation and people strategy that Mark is leading is both impressive and significant. A CPA, Mark is a graduate of Oakland University and received his MBA from the University of Notre Dame. We are grateful Mark finds time to be a DEC board member, fellow DEC board member, and DEC treasurer. Mark and Mark, let's ask you to join us on stage. And ladies and gentlemen, if you join me, please give a warm Detroit Economic Club welcome to Mark Hoplamazian and Mark Mendola.
Thank you so much. You're very kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Hey.
Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome, Steve.
Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Hi.
I have to first get started. Mark Mendola, how does it feel to be in the presence of such brilliant and handsome Armenians?
Is this being taped? It's awesome. It's amazing.
There was only one answer to that. All right,
Yeah.
So let's get into this. You guys both run iconic companies. I think 80,000 employees.
160,000.
160,000 and
Only 60,000.
only 60,000. So you're on the front lines of the talent issues that every company in this room is grappling with. So in our 30 minutes or so, I want to cover work models, what workers want, and talent retention. I think that's really important. So let's start with work models and the big elephant in the room, and we discussed this already at the speaker reception, thanks to Jan. Return to the office. So the debate rages on. You've got employees on one hand screaming, I don't want to come back to the office. I'll quit if you make me come back full time. We've got companies that say, I need you to come back to the office. I need some in-person presence. So where is this all headed? I guess we'll start with Mark Mendola.
Yeah, so first of all, it's great to see everybody, and thanks for coming. So first of all, I think it is important just to bifurcate the question for a second. There are certain organizations that have the ability to have a flexible work arrangement, primarily professional services firms, law firms, and et cetera. There are other organizations, as Mark leads with Hyatt, where you have to be on property, or where you have to be at a plant or in manufacturing. So my response is one within the professional services environment where we have greater flexibility. I believe very strongly that it's a mistake for companies or organizations to mandate anything today. I think it's really incumbent upon organizations to do a better job of listening to the needs of their workforce, and then try to find the appropriate balance of when can we make sure that we're bringing people in for collaboration, for training, for development, for innovation, and for, in our world, in public accounting, also provide great audit, tax, and consulting services. I think the days of mandating, unfortunately saying in an office setting that you need to come in 5 days a week or else, I think that's dangerous, and I don't think that that's a winning proposition. I also am not so sure that I totally agree with the notion that all employees don't want to come in the office. I think most people, especially Gen Z, millennials and all that, are desperate to want to try to be part of a community, learn from each other. Maybe it's not every day, but certainly we're trying to find options for people to get together. So the short answer, Steve, is I think as we go through the discussion, the one takeaway is that the hybrid model and the flex model, in my opinion, is the only way for organizations to see long-term success, again, at the headquarters space.
Mark, 165,000 employees.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we live in two realities. As Mark just mentioned, 98% of our employees are at property level. While it's true that you can't make a bed or cook a meal for someone or serve them if you're in your own home, they haven't figured that out yet. We're not quite at the Jetsons where you can just beam yourself somewhere else. The fact is that there are many, many different things that we've had to turn to, which we should have turned to years or decades ago. There are a great number of anachronisms that still exist in our industry. I think this is true in most industries. For example, I was mentioning this to Mark earlier. You know, someone about 40 years ago decided that the housekeeping shift should start with a stand-up at 7:30, and then housekeepers start cleaning rooms at 8 o'clock, and they go until 3, and then that's the end of their day. Somehow, someone forgot to actually think about that at all. And so it turns out that, you know, during COVID and now in this post-pandemic world, a lot of people's lives have changed, and people need to stay home and get their kids off to work or help their parent who's living with them at home. Why can't they start at 8:30 or 9 o'clock? Why can't we have a flexible schedule and allow them to kick off before they have to be home to meet their child? It sounds so simple, but it's shocking how little open-minded, growth mindseted thinking is going on. And so what happens? You know, necessity is the mother of invention. So you need to go and start interrogating, why do we do what we do, and is it effective? The second thing I would say is we're a very purpose-driven company. Our purpose is to care for people so they can be their best. I'm not going to take time to unpack that right now. Let me just tell you, it's imbued and embedded in everything that we do. It's centered around care, and we define care as practicing empathy first and foremost, and then taking action against what you understand about someone. So with respect to Mark's comment earlier about listening, what I found is as we were finally bringing people back on property, we were largely shut down for almost a year. When we were starting to bring people back on property, listening carefully, and I described it as listening to understand instead of listening to respond. And so many people are listening, but what they're actually thinking is, how am I going to respond to that? Mm-hmm. As opposed to, let me actually really understand, and let me ask questions. Let me not assume that I can figure out the answer let me not figure out that I understand what they really need and jump to a proposed solution. Let me even not get there. And it just opens up a lot of space so that you can really, really understand, that's the true practice of empathy, what's going on with someone, and therefore how to accommodate them. And I think that's been essential for us because we are managing, you know, our corporate workforce in the manner that Mark just mentioned, not making any hard and fast rules. I delegated down the responsibility for who is going to work when and so forth to the people leaders. Mostly, in our case, that's senior vice presidents and in some cases vice presidents. And I said, you have 3 things to worry about. The first is we have work to get done. Second thing is the well-being of our colleagues is paramount. because especially mental health issues are rampant. So well-being is critical. The third is community and culture and connectivity and belonging, which are really important to end up giving people a sense of connectivity that Mark was talking about earlier. I see it in our client base. People are rampantly getting people back together to reconnect. Right. And it's emotional, it's psychological, it's holistic. And so I said, here, those are the three things that you need to, those are the design principles. You can't satisfy one at the expense of the other. Now go figure it out. That's literally the direction I gave. I didn't try to map it out. I have this expression, giving someone a compass, not a map. I'm not going to map out exactly how you do it, but I'm going to tell you where we're headed.
That's good.
And so we are where Mark described, which is a very flexible, it doesn't look the same for every department, and we are constantly adapting. It's like a never-ending adaptation cycle.
We all travel, and that perhaps looks different today than it did pre-pandemic. And in September, we had Ed Bastian, CEO of Delta Airlines.
Yep.
We talked about that business travel was slowly returning. Mm-hmm. I think it looks different, though, is what we heard from Ed and others. What are you seeing, and can you tie it to return to the office?
You want me to start?
Yeah, please.
I'll make it quick.
Yep.
Tuesday is the new Monday. So
I love that.
just is. People are now working from wherever they are on Monday. We've seen, so the way we track this is we have so-called shoulder days during the week in our business. And Thursday nights and Sunday nights were always the weird days where people were peeling off Thursday afternoon to fly back to wherever they were from and spend Friday and the weekend. And Sunday nights were dead because people jumped on planes on Monday morning. Well, now Thursdays and Sundays have actually recovered much better than midweek, and people are now leaving for their trips on Tuesday morning. So there's some actual feedback loop into scheduled carriers for that. But it's coming back. We've seen persistent increases in what we call transient, that is a couple of nights stay and not traveling with 10 people or more, travel. And we think that that's going to continue to move up. There's also been some shifting, like some of our bank customers on the East Coast, instead of having their C-suite travel individually out to the West Coast to meet with clients, they're now taking the entire team out, cross-functional, and having a road show. They go down up and down the East Coast, or West Coast rather, for a week. So all of a sudden, transient travel has turned into group travel, but it's still commercial travel. So I think some of the old terminology and tracking mechanisms and data that we use to track this need to be rethought.
Yeah, I think, so first of all the large professional services firms, we're likely the top 3 customers at every airline and hotel. So PwC, for which I represent, Hyatt, Marriott, Hilton, Delta, United, they want to know what we're doing because business travel, it's a premium price, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really important that we engage with our clients how they want to be engaged with. So Steve, if, as you know, we talked about this earlier, I spent a ton of time traveling across the country. I used to travel with a group of people. I travel more individually now. Mm-hmm. The team that I travel with are stay-at-home moms, and they can work virtually rather than traveling with me. So we're balancing the personal needs of our entire teams. I'm in a different situation. I enjoy to travel. I'll continue to do that. We're seeing our travel patterns escalate, but in fact, you and I were talking about this, greater than even pre-pandemic. Yeah. With certain of us. The one thing that I'm most excited about is despite our real estate footprint, so PwC, we lease 12 million square feet a year across the country, meaning we have an office in every city. We're averaging something like 10% of our workforce is in the office. If you do the math, that's not a prosperous model. So you could bet that we're looking at, we shut down one of our headquarters in New York because why spend the money? We want to reinvest that with their people and investments. But the one thing that's caught fire is our teams want to get together for conferences. They want to get together for communities. So we do a lot of conferences right now at a lot of Hyatts, and they really enjoy that. So when you feel a little bit isolated and you choose to work more remote or even more virtually from home, the one thing that's really picking up is to travel for all these conferences. And we think that that's something that's really important to help us sustain and drive our culture, as well as getting back that way.
I think that's what I would say is the primary motivator.
Yeah.
Famously or infamously, I guess, Bill Gates in August of 2020 said, business travel will forevermore be no more than 50% what it was pre-pandemic. Made this broad declaration. And Bill is a brilliant guy, but he got this completely wrong. Our top 10 customers are PwC and their brethren, all the tech companies, Microsoft included, and consulting companies. And that group, our top 10, are already over 80% of where they were pre-pandemic. And there's a handful, 5 or 6, that are at 120 and 130% of where they were pre-pandemic. And this motivator to get people back together, the so connectivity, is people feel a sense of urgency about it. They're worried about retaining that culture. And I have to say, among our top 10 customers, the reason Mark and I got so close as friends is because I was so inspired by listening to what PwC does to engender and nurture a culture that is deeply based on belonging and advancement for individuals. And they did it at the individual level. So I was furiously taking notes during our first meeting saying, okay, we got to do that, we got to do this, we got to do that. But this is actually why people need to get back together.
Right. That's exactly. Thank you.
I want to talk about that a little bit deeper, and that's the topic of productivity. Many companies have reported record productivity, but it has come with a cost, and that's record levels of attrition, decline in engagement, and innovation. And those are costly trade-offs, I think. So how are both of you feeling about productivity and innovation in your organizations?
Well, first of all, we have an obligation to all of our clients. So during COVID, we still delivered audits, Kelly Services. We still delivered tax returns, and we still implemented large-scale transformation, SAP, Salesforce. Our clients didn't say, it's COVID, we'll just tell the Securities and Exchange Commission, we'll just take a delay. So we maintained our productivity. Honestly, everything went exceedingly well. We're very fortunate to go from everyone in a conference room working all night with our clients to everyone being in a home and making this happen. That's a credit to our technology team and to our clients. So that worked out very, very well. So we've been very productive. The cost of that, Mark mentioned the whole point of well-being, is pretty significant. So we had extremely high turnover. Again, so we have 60,000 staff, we have 4,000 partners. We're losing close to 30% of our workforce in parts of our business. And we didn't know how to reach them because they're working from home. So we wanted to greatly bring people back into the offices to get a greater sense of community, and we're working really, really hard to that. Since that time, our turnover is cut in half, which is great. Partially, we think because people actually are appreciating that we're trying to do everything we can on behalf of our people. What we've done, Steve, is we've created an entire new business model for our people. And it's called My Plus, and I could just spend a second on this. It's all about individual choice. So if JR was working at PwC, he would be able to choose how he works, when he works, where he works. That's crazy back in the old PwC days, right? But you can do that. And then we would create a talent marketplace where JR would say, post it like an Uber, here's a great project at Kelly Services, here's a great project at Ford, and I have those skill sets, I want to work on that exciting client. Or I want to go visit Chicago because I love working with the brand of Hyatt. I wonder if there's a project for me. We're creating a talent marketplace within our firm to give people the ability to have choice. Last thing, and we also are specifically focused on the individual needs of health and well-being. So whether it's parental leave, whether it's emotional well-being. Mark, we talked about how we relax in the morning, deep breathing exercise. We're trying to do that. I do think very strongly those organizations that don't embrace the broader me versus just a worker, but purpose-led, inclusion-led, leveraging technology for your own individual learning path, I think that they're going to lose employees of the future, and we're trying to get ahead of that.
Innovation, engagement, how are you guys feeling
Yeah,
about that?
first of all, I love the marketplace.
Yeah,
What
thank you.
a cool implementation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the fact is that during COVID, we threw out every model that we had before in terms of how we went to market because we were in discovery mode. So innovation happened at the property level to just figure out where we could find demand anywhere. And we started using dramatically different data sets than we ever had before, and distribution channels too, very atypical distribution channels. And this was all done in the field. And so that inspired me to apply, for those of you who have a background or knowledge about software development, you'll quickly recognize Agile as a means of development of how you develop software. And it's inherently cross-functional. There's a very clear outcome that you're trying to drive, but there's a certain process, and it's largely based on quick cycles of testing and learning and adaptation. And I looked at that and thought, that's the way we could run the entire company.
Right.
So we have methodically over the last 18 months been running more and more of our business, including finance, HR, legal, all of our project-based work in Agile form. And that has actually been the antidote to the creativity and innovation issue that can develop. I think for us, at least, remaining siloed in the yesteryear world of pre-pandemic was not an option. And we're on a continuous adaptation cycle now to try to get more and more of the company operating that way. And you get different perspectives. Inclusion is really bringing a lot of people from different parts of the company together to work together in rapid cycles. And it's almost like creating the platform for innovation. So that's really what we've done and turned to. At the hotel level, our productivity has gone up a lot, but it's been almost exclusively in getting people to trained into cross-functional roles. Whereas before we had many siloed roles, we now have people who can span many different areas. And loading in a hotel is variable. Like in some hotels, you could shoot a cannon through it for about 2/3 of the day and not hit anybody. And so how you actually utilize people, and managers in particular, who are now doing a lot of things that you would have thought a frontline worker would do, has really gone a long way to produce extra productivity, but not necessarily at the expense of innovation.
Yep. True or false? Last workplace question. True or false, and why? Gen Z does not want to come back to the office. I know you briefly mentioned that. True or false, and why?
Well, I don't think there's any absolutes. I think Gen Z's 25-year-olds right now, maybe. Our average age is 27. They want to get together. So whether or not it means, so for us, it might be they want to get together at Hyatt, at Kelly Services, or an organization as a team. They want to get together socially. They want to get together through conferences. Generally speaking, we've fostered an environment that's evolved our culture that we can be agile too, and accept and embrace that some people do not want to come to the office. 20% of our workforce, I repeat, 20% of our workforce is 100% virtual. When we gave that as a choice, it was a Sunday night when we made the decision, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. 20% of 60,000 people said, well, I'm never going to come in the office. And frankly, that did shock me. So now we have to evolve to figure out how we're going to make sure that they understand the PwC way, the culture, the collaboration. And we're still working through that.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, Steve, and to wrap up the point, even that group that's 100% virtual, 20% of our workforce, we still are kind of asking people to get together in the evenings or and visit and have a ball game and all that. And that's the balance that we're trying to drive.
Quick response is Gen Zers are human beings. Human beings are driven by connectivity,
Yeah.
and they are too. And I would say, I completely agree with how Mark just characterized it. The workplace is one of many different
Right.
options, but I think it's not an option not to get people together.
Right.
Because you cannot generate and develop proximity, and I'm going to use the word intimacy, and what I mean by that is a deep knowledge and appreciation and care for another person if you don't spend time with them in person. You can't do it through Zoom. It doesn't work. So whether it's socially or at a client site or at a special event, or PwC's got a lot of things that are designed for personal development, and they then leave their own employees to their own associates to make their own decisions about when they engage in that personal development. No matter the form and format, it's the need to be together is still very acute and very strong.
I want to pivot to workers, what they want. And I'm going to reference a Kelly Services survey shows employees want more meaningful work and others want the opportunity to develop new skills to advance their careers. Those include digital literacy, emotional intelligence, and technology know-how. And those are the top 3 skills for career progression. I know Mark Mendola, because our daughter works for PwC, digital training is a really big deal for that. So what have you found that your employees are looking for?
Yeah, so here's the secret. We felt the need to do digitally upskilling of our workforce for our employees, for their own self-development, all that. Also at the enterprise level, we gain greater efficiencies and skill. So now we can deliver our services or product through a digital way and a greater experience. But at the same time, our employees enjoy that. We've also recognized, Steve, to go back to your point where people want something more than just work. They want to be part, and Hyatt's phenomenal at this too, is purpose-led. So we actually, when we bring on board people, we actually ask our staff to create, how do they want to be engaged by the firm outside of the firm? What drives them purposely? So whatever those things are, we fully embrace that. And we also believe strongly that whether it's productivity, whether it's well-being, whether it's purpose-led, whether it's digital and tech enablement, a happy workforce is more productive. A happy workforce helps drive your culture. What's the alternative? So we're doing all those things for the betterment of all of our staff, but the broader enterprise also benefits from that. And Mark knows this, we spend a lot of time in the marketplace, it's not a sales, but I really do believe this. We've totally changed our learning paths from the old days where you would sit in a conference room and listen to someone drone on about a technical requirement. All of us have been through that. Now what we do is we have individual learning paths and digital upskilling. So when a staff, so JR's a staff, he's doing auditing, he doesn't know blockchain, he doesn't know 3D printing, he wants to know, understand more Ultrix tools and all that. We encourage and embrace and reward, and we offer certifications for people like JR that says, I want to try and explore different things. And once he or she gets that certification, then he or she would qualify for more fun work. So it's something that I'm very proud of. And maybe JR's the wrong example because he could never do it, but maybe somebody else.
I was just about to say, he's recruiting you pretty hard. Not with that last comment.
That's us, yeah.
How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, by the way, I just have to plug the digital fitness
Yeah.
app that PwC developed is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Just the simple, what's the expression? If I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter. They got it down to a simple delivery format that is brilliant. And it's everything from learning substantively enough to be a practitioner of that area, but it also can be like a survey course and just getting to know it.
That's right.
Super amazing. And I would say that the, largely along the lines of what Mark was saying, people do still want to feel connected to something that they can believe in with their hearts, not just their pocketbooks and more of their right brain than their left brain. And I think that remains essential. I think it's our purpose that allowed us to not just get through COVID, but to be thriving on the other side of it. We went through a tormenting time where we had to lay off a lot of people. And we went through a very extended period of time in which we had a huge number of hotels shut down. So the stress was very high, but our purpose was a constant throughout that. And people felt more strongly about the veracity and integrity of our purpose since then than they did before, because of how we did what we did. Not, the act of laying people off. How do you reconcile that with a purpose about caring for people? Well, sometimes the opposite of a fundamental truth is another fundamental truth, and in this case, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Fundamental truth is we care deeply about our purpose and caring for people. Another fundamental truth is that we had an existential threat.
Right.
And so that's just the fact, and that's the reconciliation we had to go through. People got it, but they saw how we behaved and how we treated people, and that's actually what made the difference.
Last question before we turn it back over to Peter for your audience questions, and that's the worker-employer contract. It's really changed as a result of a lot of the things that we've discussed here today. Is the connection between working hard and being rewarded broken?
Let me say this. I still value hard work. I still value intellectual curiosity. Mark and I were talking about how we prepare at home for meetings and events and work. So I don't think it's broken, but it's not the only thing. And I also would say that the hard work of the repetitive nature of just grinding through, because that's the way it was done in the past, those days are over. But hard work, doing it differently, is still really, really important. And I will tell you time and time again, when I do town halls, traveling the country, meeting with our teams, just like Mark does, I always use the word intellectual curiosity. Challenge us.
That's it.
What's not working? What can we do better? Why? Because sitting where I sit in New York, I don't know what's going on in the local office like I should. And the only way to know that is to talk with our staff and talk with our partners on the ground. But I want to make sure that we create a culture where it's candid and admit when things are broken. But I would say that I always am listening to our hard workers, people that care about the firm, doing the right things, and those are the ones that continue to progress within the firm. Last thing is, and Steve, you mentioned your daughter. I know your son Matt used to work with us as well. The old days of when I made partners, 12-year track, 3 years this role, 3 years that role, 3 years, and I would grind. Those days are totally gone. Now, how you get rewarded and the way you progress is how you have an impact. And then impact might be with our customers, our clients, within the firm, and our communities. So we've seen people make partner in 9 years. You've seen people that chose to take a leave of absence or caring for sick parents. That's okay too. It's not a 12-year track. Maybe it's a 15-year track. That's totally different than the mindset of all of us back in the day. So, and I think it was time to change. Yeah.
Ditto. But the only thing I would add is the idea that hard work is about time in your seat,
right,
or time on Zoom is not really, it's about impact. And so, and increasingly, I look at it as a mindset issue. And the mindset issue that we're reinforcing over and over again is, to what degree can you bring a growth mindset to what you're doing? Because I'm not so interested in how many hours you work. I'm more interested in what you've identified as the friction points or the pain points that we're trying to solve, and how many times have you asked yourself, how might we, or what would it take to, in order to prompt a different way of approaching things? That's actually what I think that's the payoff. So it's not about, FaceTime.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You ready for some audience questions?
Sure.
All right, let's turn it over to Peter.
All right. We got to thank you for all the audience members who submitted. We're going to have more questions than we have time for. But
okay.
So thank you, Mark and Mark. Fascinating conversation around retaining employees, creating a sense of inclusion and well-being. Let's go back to how you attract talent today. And how is it different from how it was 20 years ago? What skills, competencies are you looking for? Or should other companies be looking for?
Yeah, sure.
First and foremost, I would say it's mindset for me. Of course, for a particular job, if their actual skills, qualifications, and so forth should be asked and answered before I would get involved or before a hiring manager would get serious about it. But it's the mindset that's the most important thing. I just interviewed someone who's not going to be a direct report of mine, and I spent 100% of my interview time. He's in Bangkok, so it was a Zoom call about. I didn't say this discussion's about your mindset. I just asked him a series of questions to understand what it was. So for me, I would say that's first and foremost what's important. And I think I spend more time talking about the importance of our culture and our purpose than I do talking about the P&L and our future prospects. And that's what people really want to know more about. So those are the things that I think rise to the top of my list.
I would ditto that same thing. The only thing I would add to that is, and we have a couple legacy PwC folks with us today too. We're hiring all kinds of folks, not always traditional undergrad. We're hiring people right out of community colleges. We're hiring people out of high school with certifications. Bernie, I'm hanging out with people with tattoos and all that because they're AI data specialists. They provide so much value and impact versus the traditional way of going to universities. I'm actually quite concerned of what the future is in higher education. Less people can afford higher education. I think that the way that the curriculum is done is outdated. A lot of the deans and the presidents of universities know how I feel. And that's why we created, again, this whole point of ProEdge, where why do you need a 4-year degree when we could train you to help self-develop, help deliver a client service through understanding blockchain? And so we're going down alternative paths because we cannot hire enough from undergrads. And so we're going through other sourcing. And coupled with what Mark just said, have the right purpose and the right values, which is pretty fascinating from a firm that's been around for 200 years.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Let's maybe dig into that a little bit from the standpoint of even early education. We're the largest provider of substitute teachers in America, and there is clearly a crisis in K-12 education. The test scores show it, teacher vacancies, et cetera. In addition to what you're doing internally, what can companies do together with community groups, colleges, to change some of the issues, the root causes of the challenges that we now face?
First of all, my daughter's a 6th grade school teacher, and I get a big smile just thinking about her and her days because they're overwhelmed. Our teachers are overwhelmed every single day. Just a quick point out, everyone talks about the students, what the students went through. Imagine being a school teacher dealing with a lot of crazy parents, and then you're dealing with the students. So I'm sure that's a lot of heartache for a lot of teachers. I believe strongly that it's all of us coming together. So I spent a lot of time on college campuses. We spent a lot of time with business groups. We also are very focused on the community, making sure of our inclusion efforts. We're actually spending a lot of time in sponsoring different high schools, and we're trying to bring everybody together. And yes, it's also to do good for the community and our people, but also there's a war for talent. And if we're able to take a leading position in attracting and retaining and developing our people, we have a lot of confidence in that, then we're going to continue to be a world-renowned firm, and that's what our focus is. It's not just us, it's everybody. It's like that ecosystem.
Yeah, and I look at it, first of all, we do a lot of volunteerism with as many employees as we've got around the world. A lot of volunteer hours get put to work, and a lot of them go into schools, especially in under-resourced communities. As a company, we recognized in 2017 that the hospitality industry is unique in some ways. It's not unique, but it is a small. It's a member of a small group of industries where you can come in with no skills whatsoever, get an entry-level position, and then work your way up and learn and be able to advance. So we launched something called Rise High, and Rise High, it's HY for Hyatt. And Rise High was focused on so-called opportunity youth. This is people between 16 and 24 years old who are not in school and out of work, and basically becoming increasingly disenfranchised. And that, what we noticed is that this was gaining a lot of traction even before we launched this program. Our commitment was to hire 10,000 Rise High individuals by 2025. And what's interesting is it's equally applicable in Chicago, where we are pulling young people from Englewood and Austin. These are neighborhoods on the south and west sides, which are extraordinarily underserved, as it is in Rio, where we have hired 25 young women primarily, because young women are at risk, at higher risk with respect to their safety and security, out of a huge favela. Favela is like a slum in Brazil, halfway between Ipanema and where our hotel is. The same is true in Mumbai, and the same is true in Bangkok. So this is a global phenomenon. And so my way of thinking, education is a generational shift. Getting someone out of a situation in which they haven't completed high school and they don't have a job into a job where they can learn is a much faster path to helping to advance people who really need it and to close that gap. The gap in the United States has continued to widen to a very scary level. So that's a way in which we're engaging with communities, but it takes a lot of effort and a lot of commitment to that over time.
Yeah, my hat's off to both organizations for trying to figure out how to open the aperture and create more access for more people.
Yeah.
We've launched something called Equity at Work at Kelly, and it's a similar try to create more access for more people. So
Good.
That's
congratulations
great.
for
Awesome.
that.
Keep it going.
Yeah. So Mark H., maybe one last question for you before we head to the lightning round. In Detroit in particular, there's been a lot of discussion about the potential inequity of production workers that have to go back to work and the white-collar workers that don't. You obviously have both populations. How do you maintain the morale and the esprit de corps in the whole organization when you have potentially two different ways of working? And Mark M., you have a lot of clients that are going through that, so appreciate your perspective as well.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, Mark just described why he travels, and the mandate at Hyatt has been, look, if you're in an operations job or you're in a commercial services job, you happen to work in Chicago in our hub, our headquarters, that's okay, but you need to be spending more time at property level. You need to go and spend time with our colleagues who are coming in every day and engage and be seen, but also listen carefully to what's going on. And there are major differences, especially amongst technology and digital teams and data science teams. We have the majority of those teams are working remotely. So it's not that we don't have that incidence, but for people who are supposed to be engaging to support hotels, they got to spend time in hotels. So we've really amped up our requirement that people spend more time in the field.
It's hard. It's a hard balance. I think that Mark's done a great job. Very familiar with the way that he leads Hyatt and the way that you're balancing the flexibility and choice like we talked about it in Chicago headquarters, but also the expectation for those to make sure that they're getting on a property. And then I love what you said, but those people on the property, you can't do some of those jobs from home.
No.
And I think that's where, like I just advise companies, you just have to be honest. But then having said that, still make sure that you're offering the same flexible benefits.
Exactly.
Making sure that the wellness programs are not just at corporate, but are at the plant level, at the property level. And making sure that we're thinking about, like, I don't know the right term, Mark, but one Hyatt or one PwC.
Yeah.
Making sure all employees, because everyone's making an impact, whether or not you're delivering audit tax, or whether you're a bellman at a hotel, a chef, or a general manager. Everyone's has an impact at the properties, and making sure that everyone gets the same benefits, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So now it's time for the famous DEC lightning round. So we'll spend a few minutes, real quick answers. Your first paying job?
1979 Taco Bell Employee of the Year, Westland, Michigan. Thank you very much. I was amazing. Burrito Supreme, 11.5 ounces. Weigh it.
1975, working in the nursery that my father was a landscape contractor, working in the nursery digging trees.
Great. Well, we'll keep it on jobs because that's what we've been talking about. So what did you want to be when you grew up?
Vice Chairman PwC. I nailed it.
Not a chance.
Yeah, that's probably like anybody else wanting to be an athlete, but a little too slow for that. Yeah.
Pilot, and I will eventually get my pilot's license.
Oh, good.
But once we started having kids, my wife said, that's not going to be a thing until our last child's out of college. So I got another 4 years.
Cool.
All right, last question. Mark M, owns 2 restaurants nearby, a taco restaurant and a tequila bar. So what's the best dish you cook?
Well, so I can be, my Taco Bell experience carried over to the tequila bar. I normally cook very well. The more tequila I drink, the better the food is. So it's all.
It's a source of inspiration.
Yeah. That's right. That said it best.
Best dish that I cook?
Yeah.
Oh.
Probably Armenian.
It is. So every Armenian household knows that one of our staples is pilaf, and every mom, maternal-led kitchens has their own recipe. And so my grandmother, my mom's mom, passed hers to my mom, passed it to me. So that's my dish.
Excellent.
Yep.
Sounds
Thank you.
delicious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Steve, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Do you want to finish up with the advice to your 25-year-old self? That's a great
Oh,
way to
yeah,
end.
that's
Yep.
a good one, yeah.
Yep.
Well, what advice would you give to your 25-year-old self?
Mark?
Well, on a serious note, I would
Yeah.
say advice would be go broad early and keep going broad until you discover what is making your passion go. But keep experimenting. Don't always go for the new opportunity offered to you. And my joke to Mark is, don't buy a sofa that can't fit into your apartment. His son is
happened this morning, yeah.
moving in this morning, and he has a sofa that literally cannot fit into his
So
apartment.
anyone wants to drive to New York, we got a sofa for you. And I'll just say what Mark just said, it is really important. This is a great opportunity for the young self at 25 to explore, don't narrow yourself, again, challenge the status quo, and follow your passion. That's it.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Mark and Peter, I can't think of a better way to kick off our Future of Work series. It was really impactful, very interesting conversation. So round of applause for these guys who flew in today for this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, yep. Peter, thank you for your time and talents as well. You're an important part of this Future of Work stuff as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate that you invested your time to be with us today. We won't see you again until after the Thanksgiving holiday, so thank you again for coming. Have a terrific Thanksgiving holiday. Tell your friends to join the DEC. We're a bunch of really cool people. On time, every time. I love saying it. This meeting of the Detroit Economic Club is now adjourned.
Thanks,
Thank
Steve.
you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.